Welcome to the Tell Her podcast, where extraordinary, ordinary women share real stories of resilience and courage. I hope it's not too far. Yeah. So, hello and welcome to the podcast. We have a very different type of guest on today. So, usually I feel like it's more like storytelling, but today I wanted to do something that was really empowering and could really help a lot of women at different stages of their life, and that's why I thought that you'd be a great guest. So, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Cracknell. I am American, if you can't tell from the accent, and originally from New York. And I am here today to talk about finance. So my background is in finance. I have a master's in finance from Baruch College, which is in New York City. And I also have my MBA from the University of Cambridge. Prior to getting those degrees, I worked on Wall Street. So I worked on the trading floor at places such as Deutsche Bank. And before that, the whole reason why I got involved with finance was actually it was never I never dreamed of working in finance. It wasn't what I thought I would be when I was 9 or 10. I thought actually I was going to be a veterinarian, but I actually loved animals a little too much, so I didn't go down that path because if there was a end of care thing with a pet, I found that very difficult. My father worked in finance, and he helped introduce me to this world through these Take Your Daughter to Work days. And so we'd go to these Take Your Daughter to the Work days at the World Trade Center back when it was the two tall buildings. And that really helped expose me to this world of finance that I didn't really know existed. And the programs really helped break down finance into a way that I understood it. And with that in mind, when I graduated from university, I was working actually in event planning throughout university because it was a schedule that was flexible enough to do classes and to do work events and whatnot. And so this event planning company actually shared an office with an investment bank, which was a very odd setup.
How can I say?
Yeah. And so I graduated and I was like, I just don't know what to do. And my father had died. And so I had some plans previously before he died to go to Los Angeles. Probate and all of that took up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So my brothers and I all kind of decided to stay in the New York area. And so I was like, what am I going to do for work? What am I going to do? And so I went over to this investment bank and I said, hey, are you hiring? And they said, actually, we are. And they had seen my work at the event planning company, which actually had a lot to do with being super well organized and knowing numbers and knowing big budgets and whatnot. And they said, okay, well, we'll try you out. We'll take you on. And then I just got started in finance.
The rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Do you feel like a lot of things kind of aligned for you to take that path? Even though
I think I got very lucky with that because usually what happens is people get recruited into finance. Okay. And so it's actually quite competitive to get into finance. You have to go to a very good school. You have to have a major in maths or sciences or business. Okay. And my major was actually film. So it was not that. But in school, I had always done very well in maths and sciences and whatnot. I just wanted to study film. I just got very lucky because that team, that investment bank, knew me and they knew my work, and which is why they took me on board.
But I suppose putting yourself out there as well. A lot of people wouldn't even dare take that first step of even asking the question, especially a female in a male-dominated space.
Oh, yes.
And like walking into the office. Were there any other women within that office?
There were no other women in that office.
Yeah, so even that's
just me.
I think it's more than luck. You've really put yourself in a situation where you could have got a no, but I think putting yourself there probably opened their eyes to employing somebody a little bit different. So if we go right back, so even, because like what you're saying that you're from New York.
Yes.
Do you feel that now that you live in the UK, there is a very different culture around finances?
There is a little bit more of a different culture in finance. I've noticed fewer women working in finance in the UK, and those women who do work in finance tend to be foreign. Okay. So maybe they're from the States, or they're from Asia, or Russia, or other places in Europe. They don't seem to be homegrown.
Yeah, which is
so.
Yeah, One of the things that I always say, because I've been to the States and met with other women in business and stuff, is that they do seem to be a little bit more forthright and like not afraid to empower themselves and a
Yes.
little bit more. Yeah, and I really, I love that. That's why I like going and connecting with those women, because they make me feel like I can empower myself.
Yeah.
And in the UK, I feel like sometimes women, we can step back a little bit because we just feel that we'll let the other people move forward. Does that make sense?
It does make sense,
We'll step
yes.
into the background a
Yeah.
little bit more, where when I go with the women that I meet in America, they're not afraid to step forward and say what they want, and they're not afraid to like advocate for themselves in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And I suppose being in a male-dominated space, that's quite important to be
Yes.
able to do that for yourself.
Yes.
So I know, and we'll speak about it more, but that's why you've introduced like your book, is to try
Yes.
and make that change earlier on.
Yes.
So for me, I've got my nephew who's 9, and then my daughter who's 20, and I've definitely seen it with my daughter when it starts to come to look at finances, and she'll feel a little bit overwhelmed. And because
Yeah.
I was like that at that age, and I'm trying to educate myself now in my 40s, I'm trying to make the difference with her. So I definitely think that what you're doing is going to make a huge difference to a lot of people, and let them know that it's okay to ask the questions, and it's
Yeah.
okay to not know.
It's okay to not know.
Yeah.
And not
just-
everyone knows everything. When I was studying at school, there are times where I was like, how do I do R coding? And so, which is like a very esoteric programming language for statistics. And so,
Right.
in order to learn, yes, I went to class and whatnot, but I also went on YouTube and I watched all these YouTube tutorials, and I was like, there we go.
Yeah, I'm always on
So-
YouTube.
Yeah.
If we talk about like your like growing up as well, so
Yeah.
if we'll go right back to your journey, one of the other things that's probably different about like the American culture is that take your daughter to work day.
Yes.
All of that introducing like your family into your work life.
Yeah.
Where probably in the UK we keep everything quite separate.
Yeah.
I didn't so much with my children because I had hair salons, so they'd come and be
So they'd
like
come.
in a different part of
Yeah.
the salon. I think feel like even the Spanish culture, they have the children with them at work.
Yeah.
The children see that like work environment. But in America, they do it in a different way, don't they? So like bringing the children into the workspace and
Yes.
explaining.
Yeah, so it used to be take your daughters to work day, but now I believe it's take your children's to work day.
Okay.
Which I don't know. I mean, boys have always seemed to have gone to work with their fathers,
Yeah.
so I get where they're coming from. But at the same time, boys have typically gone
They've
with their
got the
fathers.
advantage anyway,
Have got that advantage anyway. So, but when it was a take your daughters to work day, I have to say that and I don't even know now if every company did it because this was in the 90s and stuff. But certainly at the World Trade Center, they had a huge program going on
Okay.
where it was an array of girls. We must have been between 7 and 14 or something like that. And you'd go in for the day, and they would tailor it according to your age. And so the younger kids, I remember we would have like almost like Monopoly money, play shares, and that kind of things. But when you got older, you sat in like pitch meetings for makeup companies and stuff like that, and it was really interesting. And
Yeah, very. I don't know why I didn't expect it to be like that. I just
Yeah.
thought you'd be kind of behind Dad while he's
Oh,
like in
no,
his office
no.
doing things, but actually to show you the structure of what
Yeah.
happens during the day.
Yep, and they would take us around. You'd meet several people in various departments, and they would talk to you about their job. And sometimes it was more boring than others. And sometimes it was way more interesting, because I remember one time they were talking about how email was changing business, and they said, "Oh my God, email is going to make us on call 24 hours." And I remember being like, "I don't understand that," but now
you
I get
do.
it. Like they were right.
Yeah. It's really because we've got this new, I suppose, revolution now where with the AI and business is changing again, which for somebody like me is really good because it allows me to access different things, have the help and the support.
Yeah.
But in the financial world, I don't know how it's going to affect, whether that's going to be good or bad.
Right.
So I suppose in your work, in your life, you'll see lots of different changes.
Yeah.
Like say our email affected everything, and now we're going to have AI making big changes as well.
That'll
That's
be
a whole
interesting.
new podcast.
It's a whole different podcast. Yeah.
That's massive.
Yeah.
So when you first went in with your dad, like you say, you'd never really expected to work in finance. But do you
Yeah.
think that those days spent in that building gave you the confidence?
It made me more comfortable with the room and the surroundings and the
Yeah.
noise, because trading floors were very loud, and they
Yeah.
are very loud. Everyone's yelling at one another, you know,
It's
or
like the
they're on
movie.
it's like in the movies, you know, everyone's on the phone, and it's this football field sized office, essentially.
Okay.
It's this huge office with all these desks and all these people and walking and talking, and it can be very intimidating when you walk in. And actually, I remember one time I brought my brother into work. He's an actor. So I brought him into work on July 3rd, and July 3rd is usually like a half day. So I said, oh, well, I'll bring him in for the half day. It's fine, because July 4th is we have a holiday.
Yeah.
And I remember he walked in and he was like, whoa, this is so big.
That even
And I was like, it's only half full today with people. Like, half the other people have already gone on vacation.
Wow, it's crazy.
But he just was like, it's endless.
And does it, when you're working within that industry, like, is it as intense as it looks for us?
Yeah, it is very intense.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember much my 20s being outside of an office, which was fine. It was good to get set up. I would put in the hours. I would work easily, even though the markets were not open for 12 hours, I would easily get into the office at 7 a.m., if not earlier, 6:30 in the morning, easily stay until 5 or 6, sometimes 7 o'clock. So while that's not super late, it is a long day.
It's intense.
I'm glad I did it, but it's a lot. It's certainly a commitment.
So within your office, how many ratio-wise would be male to female?
Oh, it depended on the office. So usually the smaller places would be more male-oriented. When you got to the larger offices, like when I was working at Deutsche Bank, that was, it wasn't 50-50, but it was certainly like much, much better with the ratio.
And how about, have you, like in the UK, do you feel that that ratio is a lot different here?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that probably does need to change.
Yeah.
I think the hard thing is that you're kind of battling against the school system here because,
Yeah.
and then like we were saying earlier, if you've not been encouraged to go down the math route and it's where to go, if you're at my age or 20s and 30s, like how do you enter finance from that point?
Yeah.
I know you said that you were lucky, but I don't feel that you were lucky as such because it was quite brave to walk into an office and put yourself out there. Like not many people would do that. And they will have seen something in you instantly and obviously they'd seen your background before. But making the changes earlier on are obviously going to be easier.
Yes.
So we'll talk about the book first and then I think kind of go up in the ages.
Sure.
Because I've got lots of personal questions.
Yeah.
So I'm like, help me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I wrote a little children's book. So how this came to be was that about a year and a half ago, my husband was running for public office in Colchester. And so there's a lot of time where you're walking and you're handing flyers. And so during this time when you're walking and handing flyers, I would say it's when deep thought happens, you know, you're kind of like really thinking about a lot of things. And, you know, you meet so many people. And I just thought to myself, you know, there are many people who don't know much about finance. Like I just kept meeting them and small business owners, you know, many stay-at-home moms, frequently in my travels. And so I thought about it and I said, you know, I'd really love to write a children's book. And so I came up with You Can Count on Penny. It's about a little Arctic fox who likes to count. And every Arctic fox in her village has a little job. Yeah. And so the ice pickers, you know, do one thing and the counters do another job and the fishers fish. And so everyone has their own job. And so Penny always likes to count. She's always counting. And one day the town counter decides that he's going to retire. And everyone says, well, what are we going to do? You know, no, the town counter doesn't have any children. So what are we going to do? And so Penny says, well, I'd like to do it. And everyone says, well, but you know, you do ice, you don't do numbers. And she says, but I can do this. And so when she ends up getting the job, she actually improves everyone's life because of her love of numbers. And so it's just a cute little story. And I just had a really great time putting it together. When I was writing it, I also did a little bit of research about children and girls and finance. And it turns out that actually a lot of parents don't really know how to talk to their children about finance. They don't have that experience.
Yeah.
And so it really needs to start at an early age so that no one feels like they've been left behind.
Yeah.
And so this book was just to help introduce girls to numbers and math, and for them to feel comfortable with putting their hand up, raising their hand up and saying, hey, I can do this, give me a try.
And I've seen like books about talking about emotions, and I've never seen one about money and finance. I think it's really important, especially in a time when like credit and all these other things are so readily available, and people not really understanding like what they're getting themselves into. Like, so if we introduce a financial talk younger, like with my children, I didn't even realise that I wasn't having those conversations until they got to an age where we needed to have the conversations. And then you're trying to like undo a lot of things, that their beliefs. So I definitely think it'll make a big difference. I'll be definitely taking one for my nephew.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I know it's for girls and boys, but I know today I think what we were speaking about earlier is that I think as women, sometimes we kind of hand that responsibility over instead of taking responsibility for ourselves. And it's about empowerment and just feeling okay, and feeling okay if you don't know something.
Yes.
And that,
it's interesting you say that, because actually this study came out just about 2 weeks ago or something. I read it in the Financial Times about how 6 out of 10 women get mansplained when they ask about finance. And so it actually turns them off from asking about finance and numbers and checking accounts and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's too bad. That's very discouraging.
because if you're brave enough to ask the question and then it's over-explained. But I think I went through a period where I was actually almost had like a reaction when I had to ask a question about finance, to the point where my accountant, I used to go in weekly and I used to have conversations with him, and he could see me swimming, but he just got through it with me. And this particular accountant really helped me break down a lot of barriers, but it was only because of his kindness. And I had to let myself be vulnerable in that moment. So I'm very happy. But a lot of the time when you are dealing with people who are more financially educated than yourself, it can feel really intimidating. And
really,
if you get mansplained,
I know,
it's quite hard to know where to go from there. When children are younger and we speak about money, I suppose a lot of the way that we do it is with pocket money and that kind of thing, and rewarding you work and then you get X amount of money. And I suppose now we've got things like Go Henry. Like my nephew, he's got the little card where he can see and he can save up. So I feel like we are making some changes for children in general, overall. But I feel like for women, if you're not naturally gifted with money and finance in the beginning, and then you get into a relationship, that can automatically be passed on to the man. And that can put women in a vulnerable position as well. So I do feel like at every point of your life, it's really important to kind of understand what, even like we said earlier, even running your house and understanding your bills, that kind of thing, but also savings and investments. Even though I'll go back, but your journey into finance was very different. What would be the traditional journey then?
The traditional journey would have been continue to study math and science in, up through high schools, I guess we call it, and which is what I did. But then when we got to university, it's a little different in the States. You get accepted into university and then you declare the major after 2 years.
Okay.
Here, I think you declare it going in. And that's fine too. It's just a different way of doing it. But you would have to declare math or science or business, and focus on that and go from there. I mean, but of course there's always the outliers, who go to Oxford or Cambridge undergrad and study, biology, and they still get hired. But
got a particular skill that under that. If somebody was looking to, if somebody found that they were really good with finances and then they're looking to get into like the financial industry, obviously you were a trader. Were there other jobs that you did within the financial?
Oh, there's so many jobs that don't that are in finance that don't involve, working on a trading floor. There's operations, which is more of the day-to-day running of that actual firm.
Okay.
So there's like trade settlements and whatnot and reconciling the ledger every day.
Okay.
There's also compliance, which is more legal focused.
Yeah.
And that's to make sure that everything is copacetic and nothing bad has happened that day. And so there's a lot of interesting departments in finance that aren't just on the trading floor, which is also something I think really good to know as well. Because if you did want to work in finance and maybe you liked legalese a little bit more, certainly you could work in compliance, and that's a very interesting job as well.
Yeah. Did you kind of then go from did you kind of skip some things, or is it normal to kind of go straight to the trading floor? Do people...
I think it just depends.
Okay.
So yes, a good number of people go into a trading floor, but they also go into corporate finance or the operations as well. But that was just not what happened with me. So
unconventional. I feel like lots of things that where I was reading all about your background and obviously coming over to the UK and everything that happened when you arrived here.
Yeah.
I feel like you've definitely got a story.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, it's nice though. It's nice that I love the thought of, like you say, when you were a child, you're not expecting to work in finance, then be in the UK, and then now you live in the UK. And your story meeting your husband. We'll talk about that as well in a bit. But I think I'd like to more get to know you a little bit as well. But when you were working in, say, male-dominated spaces, how, because I think this is one of the things that a lot of women struggle with, is like how to be firm and be taken seriously without having to be masculine. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I get that. It's interesting because when I first started out, I wore like all black and I was like, I'm going to be, a professional businesswoman and stuff like that. And then finally, I remember looking at my closet and it was like white shirts, black skirt, white shirt, black skirt. And I was like, oh my God, this is like crazy. And I just had a nervous breakdown and I ended up wearing like all this color to the office because I was like, I can't take it anymore.
It's like your personality, because obviously I can see you very feminine and like softly spoken, but you must be able to be assertive in your workplace to be able to do well. Yeah. So it did take a while. It did take a while. I was young and shy and stuff in the beginning. So if somebody was like listening and they're looking to go into like a male dominated space, what would you tell them? Like, are there like things that...
I would say that every day you're going to feel awkward and it's okay.
Yeah.
Every day.
That's actually a really good piece of advice.
You're just going to go with it. Like every day I was like, this is weird.
But you kept pushing through.
Just kept showing up.
That's so funny. I feel like life's like that there as well.
Yeah.
There's so many situations. We were discussing before we got here how like podcasting isn't something natural for me, but I still really enjoy it. Yeah. And then like I'm not good at introductions, but I know it's going to be awkward, but then you get to this point of the podcast and you're relaxed again. Yeah. And it is just, I suppose you do, if you want to achieve good things and you want to go to amazing places, you have to fight through that awkward, don't you? And that little bit of fear. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because it reminds me of this one time. So this is what happens when like you don't really have like, I think like other women in the office. So it's Halloween. It's like my first Halloween at this firm when I just started out. And Halloween in New York City is like huge. Like everyone dresses up. Like we've got the parade. It's a whole thing. And I just showed up to work like dressed up. And it's like 7 a.m. and my boss is like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, it's Halloween. But like, it was like out of like that movie Mean Girls, like when she shows up and it's like definitely not the scene. And I was like, why would I like, why would I have ever thought that I could have dressed up in an office for Halloween? But I just like, it just didn't connect. So that was one of the more awkward days
Did you
that I'd
have to
ever
stay
had.
dressed up all day?
I did, yeah. I was the only one. Like the whole floor, no one had dressed
That's so
up.
funny.
Like,
Why did you dress up as?
as Morticia Adams. Yeah. So like I had the black wig and everything. Like it was.
Oh my God.
And the white makeup, it was really, it was really
Did it distract a lot of people?
You know, I think a lot of people thought it was really funny, but after that, I was like, whoa, I was like, I'm going to be really conservative.
At least everyone knows who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. That
That's
was
so funny.
Yeah.
That is really funny.
Yeah.
I'm kind of not reading the room.
Yeah. I did not read that room. And then like afterwards, I was like, why did I think that? Why did I do that?
But did you just the next day go back in and be like,
Oh
okay.
yeah. Oh yeah. I just was like, well, I'm here. What am I
That's
going to
so
do?
Did when you've been going through those periods and those adaptation periods and working all the way through, and obviously your career, you're growing.
Yeah.
Did you feel that, because I know now that you want to empower women and you want to really help women feel comfortable in finance
Yeah.
and on all different levels, because there are so many different levels, aren't they? Like you've got someone like me, and then like you say, like yourself, working on a trading floor. But did you always feel that when you were in the office? Did you look at other women and think we should be helping each other, or did that happen
I did
naturally?
always feel that, and it was very hard because I would try to find a mentor, you know, and certainly there were many mentors who did help me along the way, but I did not feel that it was always the same kind of mentorship offered to men.
Yes.
And so I did struggle with that. I saw the inequality there.
Yeah.
It always just kind of irked me a little bit. I was like, I wish we could just do a little bit more here, you know?
I feel like that when we go on these, like for me, when I think about helping women and empowerment, I feel like we kind of try and be the person we wish somebody had been for us.
Yeah.
I suppose that experience has shaped this journey that you're on now to...
That's a fair statement. Yeah.
So definitely, I feel like there are times in your life in general where you just could have done with somebody like coming and, like, say, mentoring you or helping you. I have mentors, and definitely changed a lot for me. It does make a big difference.
Yeah.
With you, what was your journey out of that then, and then into the UK?
I had been working at Deutsche, and they had just kind of reshifted the department essentially, which basically means I was out of a job.
Okay.
And so I found another company that actually did this operations and compliance and whatnot. And just about that time, I was thinking to myself, you know, I'd really like to get my master's. I really want to get my master's degrees and whatnot. And I didn't even know which master's to get. So I said, okay, well, let me get the master's of finance done first, and because I could do that while working and go to class during the evening. And then I said, you know, I'd love to go get my MBA. And I was looking at schools in the U.S., but because I'd always been more or less in the States, I was like, let me just go to Europe for like a little bit. Let me go see what that's all about. Like, I'd love to travel around Europe and you know, have a base in a country over there and really spend some time there. And so also because the flights are so expensive from the U.S. to Europe as well. So I said, okay, well, if I get there, it'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So I applied to European business schools, and I really liked Cambridge. I just thought it was a really great community. And I met one of like my best friends there on the first day during orientation, actually, a girlfriend when I started there. And I just had such a great time there. And then, of course, I met my husband shortly thereafter. Yeah. Which like
That's
was
the
not,
whole story.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I wasn't expecting that at all. So we were seated next to one another for the induction photo so Cambridge basically has all these colleges and whatnot. They have all these separate colleges, and you're assigned to a college, even though you may study at a department. It's kind of weird. So he had a different department. He was studying human anthropology, and I was studying for my MBA. But for our college, we had this group photo, and my last name was Connell, and his last name was Cracknell. And so we were seated next to one another, and the photographer couldn't get his camera to work. And he was having a hell of a time. He was like flipping these like lenses out and like the SD cards in and out and the batteries in and out, and his wife was coming over to help him, and it was this whole thing. But they told us, don't move. You have to stay in your seats for this photo. And so we were sitting there for like 20 or 30 minutes, and so it allowed us some time to talk. And so just had a really nice general chat with him to begin with, and then we just kind of kept running into one another. And then I was like, okay. And the whole plan was for me just to come to the UK for 1 year and then go back to the US, but I ended up staying.
I was going to say, did you ever get to the other European countries?
I did.
You did?
I did, until COVID happened, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
and then I started up again.
Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about how you ended up staying in the UK.
Yeah.
So with your now husband, did he study for that particular year that you studied?
Yes.
And then you kept I read that you kept kind of bumping into each other.
Yeah.
And did you feel something straight away? Did you kind of notice it? Were you looking for him?
I wasn't looking for him.
No, he just kept appearing.
I just noticed him because he had very nice teeth. And I was like, oh, look at those nice teeth. And then I got a little irritated at him as well because they were kind of trying to explain the historical buildings surrounding us. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But he wasn't really paying attention to it. And I was like, oh, that's so annoying. He's not paying attention to these buildings. But like, it was fine.
Yeah. So how long before you actually... Because did you end up like in the same friendship group or...
So Peterhouse is one of the smallest colleges at Cambridge, and I think it probably only had about 100 mature students or so. So they would throw these events, these like meet and greets and wine and cheese and stuff for the mature students to kind of get to know one another. And those were really interesting because a lot of those students actually were PhDs and very smart cookies. In that room. I was like, woo.
I just stepped out.
Yeah. I was like, I remember one guy was studying sarcasm in the Bible, and I was like, where? What? What?
I didn't even know you could study things like that.
Yeah. And I was like, that is like intense.
Interesting.
Yeah. So James and I would usually just meet up and have slightly dumber conversations. But they were always very enjoyable. Yeah. And so we just really had a really nice time always kind of seeing one another. He was very busy because he was training for the boat race. Okay. He would always kind of show up half exhausted to many of these things.
Okay. So he's obviously a motivated person.
Yes, he's a very motivated person.
I think if you're with somebody who's motivated, you both have to kind of be that way.
Yeah.
Who would you say? Because I feel like you have to kind of both be motivated, but you're always going to have a little bit of a yin and yang to make sure that you don't burn out. Yeah. So would you say that you kind of balance each other out?
I'd say so. He's motivated in different ways than I'm motivated, but it does balance itself out.
Yeah, I think it is really important, especially like if you're motivated in your work. Yeah. It's good to have somebody that's supportive. Yeah. As well. Yeah. Like my partner's really supportive of me, but when I'm getting to burnout, he'll let me know. Yeah. And allows me to like wind down, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I feel like the partner that you choose in life is really important because it can decide whether you succeed or not as well. It is very important to choose a good partner. Yeah. And if you're somebody that is kind of independent, especially like financially independent, independent in your ways, I feel like you have to have a very confident partner as well. I think that makes a big difference. Yeah. And because he's successful in his own right, then you both, it kind of aligns, if that makes sense. What happened? So talking about COVID, the year that you were studying, did you go off and travel then afterwards? Or? I did, yeah. So during that year, I slightly underestimated how hard Cambridge would be. Okay. It was a lot of work in that first part of the year. And so actually I didn't end up traveling until towards the end of the school year when I went to France and I went to Germany. And Germany was my first time there. I went back to the States for a little bit. And then by that autumn, I had come back to the UK with my cats and moved in with James. How long after that did you tie the knot?
I think I moved in with him, what was that, 2019, and then we got married in 2021. Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it feel like a huge whirlwind? Or
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
yeah.
It was crazy because like I'd done event planning, like I'd done huge events for this
Yeah.
event planner. We'd done events for like the US Open, like really big events with Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova and Land Rover. And I still have struggled with that wedding. Like I still had a wedding planner
Yeah.
because it was like too crazy. Like for me to
Weddings,
like,
they're intense, aren't they?
very intense. And I
Yeah.
think when you're in it, to be financially conservative, you know.
I was going to just ask that. I was going to say, do you think, because you obviously would be a master at budgeting, that, because a lot of people start out with weddings with a budget and obviously it doesn't
Yeah.
stay there. Do you feel like because you were, like, you can see it from a different point of view, that was good or bad? Do you?
I think it was good and bad. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up going, so James was a member of the Royal Automobile Club. So we did the wedding there because I
Yeah.
said, okay, fine. I was like, we'll get the membership rate. And they had a whole like little wedding package,
Oh, yeah.
you know, where it was like 3 courses and open bar for like 2 hours or something like that. But we ended up paying for, you know, the full open bar because it was after COVID
Yeah.
and everyone
Everyone was
needed
just going for it.
needed to drink. But I did try to like be cognizant of costs. And so because I had people coming in from the US, I just wanted people to stay in London. I didn't want them to travel outside of
Yeah.
London because I said, oh, that would have been quite a big cost for them.
Yeah.
We had an array of hotels to choose from. The great thing about the RAC was that it had a full kitchen. So if someone had a dietary restriction, it was really easy to kind of add that in. And we had buses that took people, like the old timey
Yeah.
red buses
Yeah.
that took people from the church to the wedding, to the reception. So I did try to be budget friendly. And I
Yeah.
just remember like with the flowers, like, oh, the flowers, oh my God. The flowers are like highway robbery. I mean, they were beautiful, but talk about a markup.
Yeah.
And I just remember like, I was like, the cheapest flowers. And they're like, it's just going to be these small little things on the table. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine.
We'll go with simple.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good.
It must be so hard though, because you just have this vision. I think that's why a lot of people kind of get swept away.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're not good at budgeting and you're doing a wedding,
Yeah.
that it can cause a lot of unnecessary stress, and it's stressful anyway for somebody
It's
who's
super
organised
stressful.
and knows how to plan.
Yeah.
So what piece of advice would you give somebody who's going to start out planning a wedding
I would say,
financially?
even though it seems expensive, go for the wedding planner because they can actually just be really good at stepping in and saying no or yes or finding deals. A lot of the wedding planners work with different caterers or makeup artists or photographers, and they can, you know, help introduce you to people within your price range. And so that wedding planner that I used, she did a really good job of helping me with that.
Yeah, and I
So-
suppose for someone like me, I'd think, oh, it's just another cost, but actually in the long run, it could save.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does feel like another cost, and you say, oh my God, I can't believe it's going to be another cost. But actually paying for that extra person, and then the day of, to have an extra set of hands. I mean, it's crazy that day. Like, you know, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, getting my hair and makeup done. And then like, you've got like Aunt, you know, Gertrude, like
Yeah.
coming in, you're like, oh my God. So, you know, she was really good
Yeah.
at helping, you
Yeah.
know, with kind of managing the day.
Yeah, I suppose in general, though, in life, a lot of things that when you're not sure how to budget and plan, you might think that you're saving money on something, but
Yeah.
actually in the long run, it ends up costing you a lot more money.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, again, a lack of financial education, because
Yeah.
you're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You're kind of just always focused on like the smaller details and not thinking about like how that's going to affect everything else.
Yeah.
I know that's definitely happened with me in my business. So I've spoken before about some of my troubles.
Yeah.
So I had a situation where I had an accountant that basically didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Oh, no.
And then I had to rebuild all of my accounts for 4 years.
Oh, my
It's
God.
very stressful.
Oh, my God.
No financial education. I basically did not know what I was doing. I'm very, very lucky. It's really strange to say this, but the HMRC helped me.
Yeah.
So they could see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So they were very good. It took me 2 years. And what that did to me, it made me realise that you have to understand certain things.
Yeah.
It also made me understand the risks, because I now work with a chartered accountant who he then has somebody that he has to answer to.
Yeah.
So when in the UK, I'm not sure if you know, but a chartered accountant, obviously, if they did something wrong, they'd be struck off.
I see.
But we have
Okay.
other accountants where they don't answer to anybody.
Okay.
But for someone like me, a small business owner, I could sign the paperwork to say, yeah, that's all great,
Yeah.
and something's been done wrong, and it's my responsibility,
Yeah.
even though I haven't done, because it ultimately is. So that made me really aware of
Yeah.
the bigger picture for a lot of things. But what it also did to me was make me afraid.
Mm.
And that's why I had to go in then once a week to see this other
Yeah.
accountant who kindly took me under his wing a little bit. So it kind of made me super aware and then super scared.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I was kind of frozen. I don't ever want my children to have that experience.
Mm.
As so how do I know we've got the book, but what conversations do you think should be happening? Should we be talking about everything, like money, or does that make it just money oriented? It's like, where's the
Yeah.
balance?
You know, it's interesting because when I was in high school, we did this project, which actually I think is a very good project looking back on it, because I always think about it now, where we fake rented an apartment, and we had to
Okay.
furnish the apartment. And they gave us the IKEA catalog,
Yeah.
and we had to pick out the furniture and measure it and whatnot and budget it accordingly.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was really good because it helped me kind of understand like a bigger budget than I had been used to. Like
Yes.
previously, you know, when you're a teenager, whatnot, it's all about, okay, like how many video games can I play and how much candy can I buy? Like that's kind of like
Yeah.
the extent of the budgeting, you know? But with this project, I just remember it really like opening up the door to, well, wait a minute, like if we had this money, do we get the sofa? Do we get the chair? And it just really helped. And I actually think that even this make-believe project would actually be very helpful to many children to get them comfortable with money and numbers and budgeting and allocating and whatnot. And then going forward, I do think there's a real lack of financial education for adults.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can find it in community centers. They have chats and whatnot. I would say certainly YouTube is your friend.
Yes.
And the great thing is it doesn't mansplain.
Yes.
But there's also a lot of books, you know, these like corporate finance for dummies books, you know. If you go to the library, they have many wonderful books that are very good. It kind of depends on what media format you do well
Yeah.
with
Like how you learn.
and how you learn.
Yeah.
Or sometimes in the States, I'm not sure about here, but in the States, you can do continuing ed classes. And oftentimes they're affiliated with a university, and you can just go and you can study finance or maths or whatever, which I actually think is also really helpful. So it does depend on your own personal financial situation. Certainly the library is a really great start, or YouTube.
Yeah, I feel like for some, I tend to go to, like you say, the YouTube and that kind of thing, because I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
And then I might read in the evening. I wish that I'd have studied alongside building my business, because I know my business would be in a very different place now if I'd have had the financial education and the confidence. I'm a lot more confident financially now. Like I will, if I feel that something's wrong, I'll say something to the accountant, or I'll ask the questions and be awkward. I'll, even if it feels like a silly question, but it can make such a big difference. I suppose, with women, like we were saying earlier, we kind of hand that over, and it's kind of learning to take a little bit of responsibility. But I always find that if I can take the responsibility for myself, then pass it down to my children, then I can at least try and help them with a helping hand. I really think that the project that you were just saying is a really good idea.
Yeah.
I might do that with my daughter. I don't know if she'll.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah,
It's a
I
fun
think
little
it's a really
thing.
good idea. Like my son, he moved out last year, and he was just saying he's like a year in now, and it's just kind of hitting them that this is adult life, and like these bills
Yeah.
keep coming in,
Oh yeah.
and you keep needing to do the work and all of these other things.
Yeah.
And I think it is a shock to the system
Yeah.
for teenagers going from home life
Oh,
into
yeah.
real life, and then trying to kind of figure out how to keep on track while having a life. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And those first few years in university are very difficult and you know, it's deeply challenging. And so it is important to kind of remember that, you know, for all kids, you know, that it's going to be a challenge,
Yeah.
you know, when they go to university and just trying to manage their money, you know, maybe they have an allowance of
Yeah.
X amount of pounds a week, you know, how would they budget it, you know, and
Noodles and nights out
Yeah.
in the UK.
yeah,
They all eat noodles and just
they all
party.
eat noodles. Yeah.
And just party. But I think
Yeah.
I think the projects being introduced into schools would be a really good idea.
Yeah.
I think that we study a lot in the UK that's not really that usable outside of school.
Yeah.
And I think that we do need to shift the system a little bit.
Almost like the home ec classes need to come back, you know, when you did the cooking,
Yeah.
the little,
Exactly.
you know,
yeah,
and it's like,
it doesn't make sense that we've removed so many things that are so important
Yeah.
in everyday life. We used to do like cooking, and then we're removing my children never did it.
Yeah.
I think so. It definitely needs to come back, and like you say,
Yeah.
budgeting, that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
understanding taxes. So that I know taxes
Oh,
in
gosh, yeah.
America are a lot different.
oh, they're crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
to
don't
the
really
UK.
understand taxes either, so don't worry about that. Like,
Yeah, it's very different
No.
to the UK. So at least we do have a lot done for us. But yeah, if you don't really understand the tax that you pay in, and for me, understanding profit margins and all that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But it took me a lot of time to get the confidence to ask all of the questions.
yeah,
Obviously, when we talk about women and finance, like say running a house, running a
when you're
family,
running a house.
I do see a lot with my older clients that they might lose a husband and they've never taken care of any of the bills. So then
Yeah.
they might even be in the 60s. And then
Yeah,
they're having to relearn a lot of things. So it's like trying to just change the culture
yeah,
of women and finance, and then hopefully get them into financial
yeah.
industries and kind of work that way. What is your bigger picture like? What would you like to see?
I would like
happen?
to see more women. I feel comfortable working with math and numbers and
Yeah.
sciences and get into finance. I do think there's no reason why it should be male dominated. I mean,
No.
it doesn't make any sense. Women are very smart and capable and
Yeah.
able to do many great things. And even if you go to other cultures, my mom's Ukrainian, and so I've had that experience with Ukrainian and Russian culture. And you meet many intelligent women who work in finance or
Yeah.
work in sciences there, because the education system is a little different.
Okay.
So the education system is more math and science focused, or was, you know, in the USSR.
Yeah.
You have a bigger number of female scientists and mathematicians and whatnot there.
Right.
So there's really no reason why women feel like they can't do that here.
We do. I think we have a big problem with the system. I had a lady in yesterday in my hair loss clinic. They're doing GCSEs in the UK at the moment.
Yes.
And now they've kind of changed it to you have to have your maths and English. I think maybe your science, or you can't leave till you're 18.
Yes.
But when I was speaking to her yesterday, she said it's not actually law. It's a suggestion.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
so I think that's really strange. And they can clearly see that we've got a huge problem when it comes to
Yeah.
math in the UK, but they're not quite putting the foot down on
Yeah.
it. They're like, oh, it's kind of a requirement. So they had a lot of people that had struggled last year, and she was saying how now they put things in place so you might have like a room with one person studying so that
Yeah.
they don't get distracted, that kind of thing. And I just found it really interesting that we've acknowledged that there's a problem there, and we've just half kind of put a Band-Aid on it. And if somebody's really struggling, so you've got like a young woman and she knows that she needs a maths and English, but then she needs to go out to work,
Yeah.
and she's kind of pulled. She's
Yeah.
gonna, most of the time they're gonna choose to just go out to work because they're only looking at the short term.
Yeah.
Where I feel like if it was a legal requirement that you're in school till 18, then
Yeah.
they're more likely going to follow through.
Yes.
It's just strange that we're not fully committing to solving the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. There needs to be a little bit of a rehaul on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think people are slipping through the cracks.
Yes, definitely.
You know.
And not necessarily because they don't want to have that qualification and they
Yeah.
don't want to educate themselves. But I don't think it's really the system's set up here for people to study.
Yeah.
Make it very expensive, very difficult for like the average person, I suppose, to study. So I would like to see those changes because I definitely feel like for me, if I'd have had the opportunities, I would have studied and
Yeah.
done things, and I would have liked to have had the knowledge that if I'm going to be a business owner, that even if it's a creative business, you should study
Yeah.
math and business and other things, and that was never really an option.
Yeah.
I don't really know, like now, what happens. I should really look into that. I only know from the people that I've met and what they were saying, but I know definitely with the lady yesterday, it just kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
That it's like, why put it in place and not actually keep people there
Yeah.
and keep them going through? With your life now, what is it that you actually, like, where do you see yourself going career-wise, or...
Well, I see myself staying in the UK, and I'm still working in finance, and I have a wonderful job in London. I love my office, and we hire many women in our office, women who are coming back after having had children,
Yeah.
who've been out of the workforce for a few years. We've hired a few of those
really
types of women as well, and,
Yeah.
and young girls starting out, and we do have men there too.
They're allowed.
Where they're allowed, yeah. So it's just a really lovely environment. So I think I'm happy staying with where I am
Yeah.
for a few years, and then we'll see what happens. I have no idea what'll come up.
Yeah. Would you consider, because obviously with your first book, what age range is that for?
6 to 8.
Yeah. Would you consider introducing something for, like, like you were saying about the teenagers?
I would. I've been thinking about, do I do a sequel to Penny, or do I do something a little bit for the teenagers?
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of going back and forth. Maybe I'll do both, but we'll see.
I actually, as a parent, I feel that I would definitely buy like a series of books if it kind of was, Penny was the first one, and then the next age range, like as it got a bit older, then I'd buy them the next book and kind of just introduce that into like a normal kind of reading schedule.
Well, maybe Penny gets a little older.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happens with Penny.
I think that would be really good for parents like myself, not realising that we've not done that.
Yeah.
And then introducing it a little bit older, because I definitely think that's going to make me sound like a really terrible parent. But when you have more than one child, so say this is so random, but so for instance, I had my son, and he had all of the special books and all of those things, and they get passed down to my daughter. But then I realised when she was, I can't remember how old she was, that I'd forgotten to teach her how to tie laces.
Oh no.
Because I just assumed that because my son would do it, he would. We were all just tying laces.
Oh,
and I think as a parent, sometimes you're so busy working, providing,
it's a lot.
doing all of those things, that you can kind of sit back and think, oh, I actually didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
And not just like finances, women's health, lots of things.
Yeah.
I do think that just having those little reminders every now and again, like as a parent, to educate your child on different things is really important. And I think reading books I love to read anyway.
Yeah.
I love reading books. I just think it's an amazing way to introduce like math, science and things into life. Well, one of the last questions actually that I want to ask you, if somebody was now realising that, say they've been a mum young, or they've been taken on a different path, but they realise, say in their 20s and 30s, that actually they're really good at math and science, and they're really interested. Do you think that it is possible to enter into that industry at that kind of age?
I think if you believe in yourself and you say, this is what I want to do,
Yeah.
I think that's half the battle. Then the other half is finding a job or having a goal that you work towards in terms of qualifications or the finance industry has a lot of tests. So there's like regulation tests and whatnot. The FCA has a test that you have to pass in order to work in finance and in order to sell. And everyone takes it if you are working with client money and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so if you were that woman, then you'd have to make sure you studied for that test and pass that test.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to network.
Yeah.
And come up with a compelling story about why now and why finance and what you want to achieve.
And like advocate for yourself.
And advocate for yourself. Yeah.
And step
to,
through the door.
You just have to feel very comfortable with doing it, and just know that like the people across from you. Okay, you might meet people who are complete blowhards, but then you can also meet people who can see hunger and see talent, and they want to help. Many people do want to help, and so they might not be able to help you, but maybe they have a friend or a referral or someone to speak with, and you ask them for that referral. And actually it ties into when I got my job at Deutsche Bank, I called like 100 people. Yeah. I called 100 people to hire me. And finally that last person, he said, well, I don't know anyone. I'm not hiring right now, but if you call this person, they might be able to help. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, I had a job. Amazing. And it was amazing. But it was a lot of no answers, no, I don't have anything. Let's just get coffee. Like it was a lot of work and a lot of months, but it did pay off. And so I just kept trucking with that. So
I suppose it's like you said earlier, being comfortable, being uncomfortable for a little while.
Yeah.
And just really knowing that it's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
It's okay to, yeah.
Yeah. I always say to my children, like, everything good, it is hard work or everybody would have it. Yeah. Like, you have to really put yourself out there. So I feel like just, it is that. And the podcast always comes back to that advocating for yourself. Yeah. That's, I think, whether it's like finance, women's health, going to the doctor, like being independent in whatever way, it is that self-belief and that really putting yourself out there. Even coming to do this podcast, it is difficult. It's, I know that these things are natural for a lot of people, but they're not for me. Yeah. But I see the bigger picture, and I know that we can help a lot of people. Yeah. Give them confidence, and hopefully start really young as well. It's completely random. I hope my sister don't mind me saying this, but I bought my sister a book to read with her son when she was getting divorced. So they read it together. Yeah. So they learnt things together. And even buying your child this book and reading and introducing it, it could help both. Yeah. And like it become like a normal thing to talk about money. So I feel like one of the things that I wanted to say is that I've learned as I've got older is spending time with people who are comfortable talking about money. Not in like a showing off way, but they're very financially educated. And they want to share, because I have found that as well. When you were just saying that people do want to help. Yes. That the more that I've spent around people who working like with money, the more that I've learned, and they actually want to share. They do. Lot. Yeah. They really want to help everyone, and they believe that everything is accessible if you just work hard enough and you try hard enough. So I feel like just introducing it into daily life, and like having these conversations is really important. Have you got anything else that you want to?
No, I think thank you so much for having me.
It's all right.
I'm sorry for if I was awkward at times.
I'm awkward all the time, so it's fine.
It's so funny that you even say like just being brave to do things. Like I've never been in this city, and so I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to go here for the first time. It's like so new, and I was I was a little nervous when I got on the train, but I was like, oh, just do it. Let me just get on the train.
Exactly. So, that's it, isn't it? It's getting on the train and going, and
just getting on the train and going, and it's like, how bad could it be?
Exactly.
Like most people are actually very kind and do want to help.
Yeah, definitely. So if anybody wants to buy the book, I'll pop the link in the bio.
Yes, it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And then if they want to, do you have like a social media that you use for?
Yes, so I've got a website at jordancracknell.com. Yeah. And I also have mostly Instagram actually, Ms. MS Jordan Cracknell.
Yeah. And we'll pop all that link in the bio as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
Yeah, it was really good. But you're right about it. After the hour where you kind of are just like,
Yes.